prime time. I think it's the fullest house we've had in a long time, too, which is great. And you ready?
Ready.
Okay. Live audience, when you see that going on the screen, that means we are now on TV, also live stream. So let's bring the October 7th Town Board meeting to order. Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ally, can you please do roll call?
Councilman Flaherty.
Here.
Councilman Abbott.
Here.
Councilman Dean.
Here.
Councilman Cagle.
Here.
Councilman Feldy. Present. Councilman Nestor.
Frozen. All right, well, we have a pretty robust schedule tonight, and we also have a very robust attendance tonight. I'll be interested to see, Dolly, how many of the attendees stay for the whole meeting. Let's see if we can keep them entertained, I guess. But the first item up, we have 3 public hearings tonight. The first public hearing is a public hearing to discuss correcting and revising the composition of the Shoemaker Road Water District Number 2 and the Clem Road Water District Number 6 in the town of Webster. I'm going to open that public hearing now. Is there any, well, actually, is it William Roebuck? Would you like to get up and talk?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
And you go by William or Bill?
Bill's fine.
Bill, you can give your name and address.
Yep. Bill Roback, 748 Hundred Road. I've been speaking right along with Dorothy, I believe. Dorothy. In regards to the Shoemaker Clem Road District, for the last 2 years I've been charged for the Clem Road, I think it's number 5 district, on my last 2 taxes. So anyways, I've done a lot of digging and found out through Monroe County Water Authority that I know this, but I've always been tied into the Shoemaker District. I was tied over in 1993. Obviously, so the records got messed up for the last 2 years. And I'm just looking to resolve that.
And that's pretty much the notes I have, Dolly. I don't hear you call Dorothy. Mary and Josh, is that also the way you understand it, and Charlie?
My understanding is we have basically 4 properties that are involved, 744, 745, 747, and 748 Herman Road, of which 2 were, it's a little confusing because they're getting water from one but being billed to another, and that's really the issue. Just to clarify, it took some time to get this straight. But Mr. Roebuck, you've been getting water from Shoemaker Road?
Correct.
But you've been billed from Clem?
Correct.
Okay. So the intent of the hearing is to correct the map. Among other things, that we are going to take your property from the Clem Road District and put you in the Shoemaker District. That's what you want. And we're going to
Yes,
take the
please.
properties at 744 and 745 from Shoemaker and put them into Clem.
Correct.
Okay. So it's These are two on each, across the street from each other, correct?
Yes, so 745 is directly across the street from me. And there's 744, which is next door to me,
Okay.
and then whatever the other address is.
All right, well, the intent is once we do this, we're going to send this on to the water authority and to the county and make sure that everything is as it's supposed to be.
I know that the other three addresses were tied over to the new district. Because Monroe County Water Authority does not like spaghetti lines. So they were tied in with straight, they tied in straight from the front of their house out to the new main. Excuse me. With the exception of me. I wasn't tied over like that.
Well, as far as I know, the county's been advised of this. I know you want to make some corrections also on the taxes and everything else. That will be done separately, okay? We need to get this done first, okay?
Absolutely, thank you very much.
Okay. In layman terms, we're reversing, we're correcting an error, right?
I just want to, also I want to ask Mr. Artuso, if all the people in these two districts have been notified of this hearing tonight, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And they've been notified by a mailing
Yes, we sent out postcards
to each property?
to each property, both of the districts.
Okay. So I just want that to be on the record that they've all been notified. Okay,
Right.
everybody in both districts, both the Clem 6 and Shoemaker 2 have been notified.
Okay. So I take it Mr. or Mrs. Hicks is not here tonight, because I think they're the other affected property owner. Just want to make sure they're not on my sign-in list, but better safe than sorry. If not, I'm inclined to close out the public hearing, which I will. And now, prior to reading in, we make a motion for a resolution to correct this. Is there any other board discussion or questions? All right, any
No,
comments?
as you said, we're correcting an error, and I think it sounds like it's going to, at least the first step in taking care of Bill's concerns.
Sure. Okay. Well, Charlie, I'm inclined to read it word for word, unless you think there is a brevity way to do this.
Probably isn't. Probably you could just,
I
you
wonder,
probably skip to the second page.
okay, because
I just start at the top of the second page, and that, because that mentions the addresses, the
sure.
tax ID numbers.
And I really would like to see the audience stay for the whole time, Charlie, so we don't want to chase them out with boring stuff too early. But this motion is an order of the Webster Town Board approving a correction and revision of the Shoemaker Road Water District Number 2 and the Clem Road Water District Number 6 in the town of Webster. Whereas it is proposed that the properties at 744 Herman Road, parcel ID 064.01-1-13, and 745 Herman Road, parcel ID 064.01-2-11.1, should be removed from the list of properties in the Shoemaker Road Water District Number 2 and placed among those in the Clem Road Water District Number 6, from which they receive water. And whereas it is proposed that the properties at 747 Herman Road, parcel ID 064.01-2-12, and 748 Herman Road, parcel ID 064.01-1-14.1, should be removed from the list of properties in the Clem Road Water District Number 6 and placed among those in the Shoemaker Water District Number 2, for which they receive water. That is, in essence, the meat and potatoes of the motion.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye?
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman
Yes,
Dean?
Steve?
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Catali? Aye.
Okay. And I should have said, because we have a couple more public hearings, once the public hearing is closed out, the time for the public to speak is over. So Bill,
There's a correction on the addresses you have, that's all.
there's a correction, 744,
So 744, 745, 747, 748 were all on the Shoemaker District. 3, except for myself, were tied over to the new water district. When they put the new installation in, they put the new main in. But they've always had water off the Shoemaker.
I'm gonna just leave it at this for now, and I'll tell you why, Bill. Is the third one, if you're, I mean, did what we just said correct your situation?
Yes, but
I don't have a third property here, so I'm not sure what the third property is. And our assessor has been working on this, an attorney, so I'm not, when you say third property, I've got, we're correcting 748, which is your property, and
Right.
747.
yeah, but I think I heard you say that 744 will be under the Clem Road at 745, but they're not. They've always been off the Shoemaker District. When they ran the new water main, because the water authority didn't like spaghetti lines, the contractor said, let's run them out straight from your house. We'll cut it off from the old where you're tied in, and we'll just run it straight from your house out to the new main.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, Bill, I appreciate what you're saying. Oh, the assessor gives a lot of information on this. When the new water district was formed, is it safe to say that 744 and 745 prior to that had not been in a water district?
They were in the Shoemaker. They had spaghetti line, they all tied in right where the main ended in my house.
The problem we got here is what Bill is saying, and I have no reason to believe that you don't have accurate information, doesn't corroborate with what our assessor has given us on this. So
Okay.
we're gonna have to let it go for now. And if there's more information that our assessor and our attorney, the town engineer, and everybody else who looked at this missed, please come back and talk to us, and we'll try to get that resolved.
Fair enough. Thank you.
The next two public hearings are really associated with the same item. And I hope I didn't set a bad precedent, and that Mr. Robach and I just talked from the audience after the public hearing was over, because
Apologize for that.
I just want to make sure we conduct these public hearings in a way that has some order and some organization. So the next public hearing that has to do with the proposed cell tower at 833 Lake Road is related to the special use permit that the town board would need to approve for the cell tower. One thing that will be different about the next two public hearings than the first one that involved Mr. Robach's water situation is that where the town board voted on the resolution to correct it immediately subsequent to the public hearing, because of the complexities of this proposed cell tower. We will do the public hearing tonight, but the tentative vote on this by the town board is 2 weeks from tonight, which will give the town board time to take Dorothy, as you said, Bill, but we call her Dolly, our town clerk, to gather up all of the oral statements made by people at these public hearings on this cell tower, and also all the documentation that has been supplied from attorneys or other people, so that the town board gets a chance over the next 2 weeks to review it, ask questions, and come and vote in 2 weeks. And that's very different from what we just did with Mr. Robach's, where we voted on it immediately after the public hearing. Yours wasn't that controversial, Bill. I just get it resolved for you. So with that being said, I'm going to open the public hearing for a special use permit related to a proposed telecommunications tower at 833 Lake Road. And I have here 3 people that signed in to speak. Sue Sigmund, Tom Roth, and Lori Anderson.
That was your late.
And Andy came in late, but I know Andy, so, you know what, Andy? So you're gonna have to go after them. They get to go first.
Andy, if you could think my place.
Is there anybody else like Andy that maybe came in late after signing that is?
On behalf of the applicant, so I don't know if the board wants to hear that first or wants to wait until after public comment.
Go to the sheet, there's 2 other names on it.
Would love
No charge.
I agree.
it. All right. And, okay, I have an N. Phyllis and Andy, so I take it you're not signed into this one.
Correct.
So there's actually 5 people signed in, and then your name is?
Robert Bergdorf from law firm Nixon Peabody.
Robert.
Yeah, last name's Bergdorf, B-U-R-G-D-O-R-F.
Did you do that? Can you spell that again?
Yeah, B as in Bravo, U-R-G, D as in Delta, O-R-F.
Bergdorf, okay. All right, well, let me ask you something, Counselor. Charlie, I know when there's a case that usually isn't it the prosecution goes first?
Generally,
Yeah.
they have to prove the case.
So what do you
yeah.
think in something like this? I'm assuming he's for it, and the other 5 speakers, I'm pretty certain, are against it. Who do you think should go first?
Well, I think the proponent.
You will take the podium, Mr. Reed.
Thank you. Good evening. Robert Bergdorf from law firm Nixon Peabody here tonight on behalf of Verizon Wireless and its tower contractor, Blue Sky. For the record, also with me tonight is Mike Crosby, who's Verizon Wireless's RF engineer, and Peter George, Verizon Wireless's site acquisition consultant. Both of them may be able to answer questions for the board that I may not be able to.
Robert, I hate to, and I don't want to cut you off, but since you came in late, I don't know if you got the cell tower hearing guidelines. Being fair, you got 5 minutes.
Okay, that's unusual because town law requires us to put this on the record, but the applicant is usually treated differently for that purpose. But
Okay.
if that's the case, then we'll move this along quickly. But
Thank you.
Verizon Wireless is a public utility, licensed and regulated by the Federal Communications Commission. Certain rules apply. Those are all in the submission that was made June 9th. The exhibits E and F show that we have inadequate service in what we call the Webster Park cell. And the only way to resolve that is to build a new cell site in a technologically appropriate spot. I will gloss right over the fact that, and it's in the materials, so we'll have to rely on that. It sets forth the coverage deficiencies. It sets forth the limited flexibility as to where you can place a cell site and still have it work for the network. Explains how this solves it. The materials show the lack of co-location opportunities. It shows limited flexibility. For a wireless network to work, each cell must be placed very strategically to cover, but not unduly overlap in the neighboring cells. Think of it like a flashlight turned around as you lift it up. Beam gets bigger as you move it around, it moves around, but it fits in, that's called cellular, kind of a honeycomb pattern. And if you get too far over to the next cell, it interferes. If you're too far away, it gaps. That is the most simple explanation I can give in this short time frame. Here we're proposing a 125-foot self-supporting monopole that's all set forth in the site plan at 833 Lake Road. If you go to pages 11 and 12 of Exhibit E, I assume everybody's got a copy of the application.
And I was going to say, Robert, just so you don't feel like you're shorted, that has been submitted in.
Correct,
And
we
all the
submitted
town
it.
board members have copies of it. And because I'd like to think that we take our job very seriously, I know that all the town board members have read it because there have been some questions and comments and this and that. And if they're unanswered, over the next 2 weeks, we will be asking.
Okay, and I know you can't see this from here, but pages 11 and 12 I draw your attention to. It shows coverage from neighboring cells. It shows the gapping and the capacity issues here. This is the coverage area we need to solve. That's the before. Here's the after. This is the site. It shows that it covers it. This is the crown tower down here. There was discussion, why can't you run the crown tower? You can see the crown tower would basically solve in between these 2 existing towers. It's a whole nother cell. And it's explained further on page 15 of Exhibit E. Procedurally, this requires a special permit from the town board and a height variance from the town board. It's 125 feet versus 100. That extra 25 feet is necessary in order to get adequate service to the cell. It also requires site plan approval from the planning board that was granted in a previous meeting. We meet the standards for special permit and height variance, both under traditional zoning standards and the relaxed public utility standard that is afforded public utilities under New York law and the 1996 Federal Telecom Act, which is federal law that did an overlay. We meet all those standards. I can't go into them in the short time that I've got. I understand 239N was completed. I just want to check that box procedurally. Has county review been completed? 239N, okay, thank you. So that all that's left procedurally is a neg deck from this board, single agency review, and then grant a special permit and a height variance. And we understand there's folks who don't want to see it. And I've been doing this for 30 years. I've done thousands of these across the state. And we try to get them as best we can in the best spots that we can. We're very sensitive to that. But in the end, people not only want this, we have a duty under the FCC license to provide it. And you have to be able to, the antenna has to see the phone, and the phone has to see the antenna. It's a line of sight technology. It's a very weak signal. And so that's the technological challenge. You're going to see cell towers for the most part. What we proposed here, though, is unlit, is unguided, it is a monopole at 125 feet, and as these go, that's aesthetically, that's about the best you can do. Beyond that, there is no zoning impact. They don't pollute, they don't make noise, they don't have lights, they don't draw governmental resources. They simply provide this public utility service that people have come to rely on. And I'm not going to have time really to go into much more than that, but
Your presentation is 5 minutes, but the board,
Oh, sure,
if
okay,
they have
yeah.
questions or any of the town department heads,
well,
you may be up there for a few more minutes depending on that. So, I mean, we're not going to shortchange on that if there's questions or things.
well, that's it. In a nutshell, that's it. We've got a coverage problem. We wouldn't build this if we didn't have a coverage problem. We've got a capacity, a service problem, I should say, because sometimes it's coverage, sometimes it's capacity, or in this case, it's blend. So we have to solve that. What we can't do is go away. What we will do is try to find a way to solve it in the best method possible from a land use standpoint, as long as it's not unreasonable cost or unreasonable delay. That's what the law says. And many times we move these. But here, and just having done a lot of these, it's a good site. We're a quarter mile from the nearest home. You know that where this is and what's around there. And a lot of times we have to go right smack into a residential neighborhood. I've got 12 pending in Pittsburgh right now, right smack middle subdivisions. So this is, as it goes, this is from a aesthetic standpoint.
All right, so don't go yet.
Okay.
All right, because now, questions or comments? Well, like he's on the podium.
No, I think you should then now, because
Okay.
he's making a presentation.
John? Do you have anything for Mr. Berger?
I just have some issues with the lease itself.
Sorry, I couldn't hear that.
Because I have some concerns regarding the lease.
Well, now is the time to bring it up.
So in section 1, page 4, section 5B, it says landlord grants a tenant the right to clear all trees, undergrowth, or other obstructions, and to trim, cut, keep trimmed, and cut all tree limbs. Essentially, it allows pretty much clear cutting. They have a problem with that, especially given the document that we received from the county. They have some concerns of their own. The other thing is it also allows you to upgrade. And it's my understanding that at the planning board, I don't know whether it was you or a different representative indicated that it's going to be 4G, correct?
This is what, is it 4G or 5G?
That
Both.
Yeah, all
So I talked to the chairman of the planning board, and he said that he was told at the planning board this was going to be 4G, not 5G. But according to the lease, it gives you the right to go to 5G, to upgrade, to put all sorts of other structures in that area, specifically under section F, page 3.
Well, let's separate leasing from zoning.
Well,
Just because the lease says something doesn't mean that necessarily.
it does, because I asked that question too, the chairman. Was the site approval and the lease part of the approval? And I was told it was. So the lease, the language of the lease is part of the approval, is my understanding.
That's,
So,
it would be an unusual way for it to work. We're still limited by what the zoning says.
but the lease, the language is in the lease.
Okay, so what that does is that means that we, I think I have questions on, unless you have any questions on 5G. The lease lets us do things vis-a-vis the landlord, but we need zoning to do things vis-a-vis the zoning code. So, for instance, that is the clear cutting, that is standard language in all the leases. It doesn't mean there's going to be cutting, but there could be an instance where a tree grows up, so we have the right to trim that limb, so it doesn't block the
Right,
intent.
and I've looked at so many contracts over the years and have had language taken out of contracts because the contracts are so broadly written, as you just stated.
Mhm.
But the bottom line, at the end of the day, the language is in there, the right to do so is in there.
But that's
So-
a problem for the landlord. I mean, that's a landlord right, not a town right.
Regardless, it's in there. So I've got issues with that and the height, and it's on a scenic byway also. So the other thing is section 1, page 4, section 5A, tenant shall have exclusive right to install on the property and the premises communication towers, buildings, equipment, antenna, dishes, fencing, towers, temporary power sources, backup power sources, and other accessories related thereto, and to alter, supplement, or modify same as may be necessary. So there's just a couple things I wrote down with respect to the lease.
Yeah, but again, that is the lease, that is not zoning, and they are two very separate things. I don't know how else to say that, but I mean, for instance, if the town said, if the lease said we could build a 200-foot tower, but the zoning said you won't go beyond 125 feet, it doesn't matter what the lease says.
Right.
We can't do that because of what the town says. It's only our obligations and rights and responsibilities vis-a-vis the landlord.
Okay. But you still need a height variance.
We do need high variance from the town,
And
correct.
special use permit.
And special use permit, correct.
My question is really just to perhaps state what many of the residents in the area have said to us. They're very, very concerned with this being placed in such close proximity to a designated scenic highway, bypass, scenic drive, let's call it that.
Yes.
Can you comment in some way that you might allay their fears of what this is going to do to the area?
In terms of the fact you can see the tower,
Yeah.
they have to be able to see the phones have to see them, and there's limited flexibility as to where they can be placed. I don't know if there's telephones along these lines or other things you can see, but cell towers are part of the landscape. So I'd say to both of you and to anybody else in the room, where do you want to put it? How would you modify it? What we can do is go away. And the law, FCC and state law, allows us to be where we need to be in order to provide adequate service. Within that, there's limited flexibility. We are willing to go wherever works, as long as it's not a reasonable cost, reasonable delay. But we have to have site. The law allows us to have a site that works. So any site we go to, virtually any site, there's somebody who's not happy. Somebody we move it, and all we do is trade one set of neighbors for another. But if there is a solution, and I've been with the company for a long time, if you've got a solution, we're all ears. If there is a better spot where this will work, still got to work within the network, we'll look at it. Always have. But what we won't do is go away. What we won't do is fail to provide service. And in terms of being able to see it, these things need to be where they need to be in order to provide the service and to serve the people that they serve and save. The same way you've got hospitals where they need to be. You've got fire stations where they need to be. You've got water tanks where they need to be because these are public utilities that provide the service. And seeing it is part of that. That has to be balanced against what these facilities do.
Greg?
Yes, I've listened to a couple of presentations, and one of them was a discussion of the site on the Kiwanis property. And there's been two different interpretations of why that isn't going to go down there. If it worked down there, that would be pretty perfect for most everybody in this room, I think, because it would be almost invisible to anybody from Lake Road. But I think I read in your document, in your application, that it would not work there. Could you speak on that?
I don't know where that is.
My name is Mike Crosby, Verizon Wireless Art Engineer, lifelong resident of Webster. It doesn't work at the Kiwanis Lodge, I'm sorry. Had all our Cub Scout and Boy Scout events down there when I was a kid. I'd love to see it there too, but from a coverage and capacity standpoint, we need to be closer to Lake Road in order to serve Lake Road. And the second part of that is we have to be very careful about overshooting into Canada. And I realize that may sound like a silly statement being here in Webster, but from an RF standpoint, when we locate our sites too far south, in order to cover locations along the lakeshore to the north, we have to point an antenna at that. And when we do that, our RF signal overshoots into Canada. So we're within 45 miles of the Canadian border. And when RF hits water, it travels with much less loss. And so that's an interference issue for Canada. So it's two reasons. One, we can't serve the objectives or offload the capacity. And two, because we have interference issues with Canada, we locate too far south and point those antennas to the north.
Okay, so to clarify that, you did look at that site, and that site does not work for you.
Correct.
Was there any other sites in the area that would have worked for you?
There's no other sites. We're so fortunate, as Bob has mentioned, to have a large parcel like this available in the middle of the area that we're looking for. As mentioned, we have projects in Pittsburgh and other towns around Monroe County where we are actually in the neighborhoods. This is actually a perfect location where we're actually able to get back away from the road, away from residences, tuck it back up against the tree line. It's as good as it gets. And like Bob, I've been involved in thousands of sites, and this is a really great location. I know that when you're the next door neighbor, I know what that feels like. I myself had, for one of my properties I used to own, I had a 250-foot tower with lights, guy wires painted red and white, right across the street from my house. I know what that feels like, and this is very small, relatively speaking. This is only 125 feet tall. The trees in the area are 80 to 90 feet tall, so this is just above the tree line, enough for us to have a line of sight to make it work. It's modest relative to the other sites around town. We're at like 195 at the tower at the bus garage. We're at, I think, 116 at Clum Road at the church. We're at 146 center line over at 4 Mile Creek. So we're tucked right in on the lower scale of those center lines. So this is a modest site relatively speaking.
Okay.
In our search area, to give the board a sense, the search area at this size for this kind of a network, for the population density of Webster, about how much further? 1,000 feet? And what's that search area with that search area? 500 feet? What's the?
Yeah, so with a site like this, because of the antenna center line, we don't have as large of a footprint. This is only, going basically from like Baker to Holt. So you're talking about, maybe like a 1.25 mile at the most radius. So in order to fit the site properly, the search area that we look in is much smaller than that. So you're only talking about, roughly 1,000-foot radius for the search area. So we don't have the ability to just move a half a mile over here or a quarter mile over there. We're in a much more confined search area, which fortunately this particular property being large and rural agricultural in nature, being a tree farm, this just gives us that nice ability to tuck it back up against the forest preserve and keep it away from people's homes. So.
Thank you.
Bill?
I've gone through all the information. It appears to me, from what I've read and seen, that they don't have another location that will suit their needs. I'm not happy with it, by any means. But from what I've read and seen, my only question is, they got final approval from the planning board, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
There were no stipulations on that approval. I don't have the planning board's approval, so I don't.
There were a few conditions placed on it. Obviously, one will be approval by this board. I don't think there were any conditions relating to the physical nature of the tower or the location.
Okay.
I guess, two comments and one question. Comment one, this first hit our radar back on July 15th. Came to the board because we had to refer it on to the planning board. And that was the first time I saw many of the same faces in the room as tonight that were then, that were not happy about this proposed place. So I don't know what this says about me, but, and I think these people know, I went down there and I walked to every house within a half a mile of the corner of Pellet and Lake and went to the houses. Didn't go to the houses of the people that showed up here who already told me they were against it. I tried to use my time efficiently. I knew what you were going to say. I say that because I think you said that it was a quarter mile from any house.
I believe that the house closest to that, and I didn't scale it off. It was what, it looked like it was 1,082 feet to the house under the road. I may be off on that. That's what I just when I took a quick.
Okay, well, I mean, we won't split. I mean, that's
Okay.
340 yards. I mean, okay. And the only one that I couldn't really figure out was one on Pellet Road, who is, I guess, the adjacent neighbor to the south of the Bowens, who own this property. And just the way the contour of their trees and this and that. They won't see it, but they're the next neighbor over on Pellet. So I just wanted to make sure, I guess it is, it's close to, I did see how far off the road it is, the way it sits. And a lot of that is because the Bowens, I think, in aggregate have 62 acres over there, at that corner of Pellet. I think it's about 8 or 9 separate parcels that aggregate up to that. And if you want to just put in the notes, I guess, at some point, regardless of where this goes, the Bowens are looking to talk to the town about locking down that 62 acres to be forever green. And the other comment, because my question was the quarter mile, is I guess you have to see it to believe it. As I was doing my walk down there, 3 times my cell phone had Rome come in, welcome to Canada. And I had heard that happens down there, but I was like, okay, that's an exaggeration of people. It happened to me. I was surprised, and I mean, that's, I found that odd.
They will be corrected with this dominant server. What that means is that there is such a weak signal from the Verizon network that this skipping over.
I knew what it meant.
Yeah.
And,
well, this will become a dominant server and would stop
yeah.
there.
Yeah. I'm just saying that I thought the people who said we need something down there, I go in, I get Rome from Canada on my phone, and I was like, okay, that's an exaggeration. They don't get it. It happened to me. I was like, oh, I guess that is an exaggeration. So, thank you. Appreciate, and obviously, as we kind of go through all the paperwork, because now there's other speakers that are getting up to talk, they might have some other documents. You know, over the next 2 weeks, we might have to come back and ask certain clarification questions. I feel very confident the board is really doing their due diligence on this, so that the vote in 2 weeks has been very researched. No stone will be unturned, overturned, not overturned, whatever. So,
I just have one question. I don't know if you've seen the document from the county that they submitted. Refers to, on page 2, number 4, according to National Wetland Inventory Maps prepared by the United States Department of Interior, this site appears to contain a portion of federal wetland that is classified as PF01A. Low buffer area is not required as beneficial to the wetland natural buffer of 100 feet. engineers may exist on your project site. Final verification of location of federal wetlands can only be determined through an on-site delineation. The applicant may need to obtain a permit from the Corps. Have you-
Yeah, we're comfortable with that. If I'd known that question was coming, I would have brought the civil engineer. We have a group that deals with this for every site, and they will be delineating wetlands, and if there's a permit that's needed, they go to the Army Corps. And I am coming to this one late, and typically it's done even before we get to this point, because we don't want to be in a position where we've got to go backwards. So that should have been cleared internally by now, and I expect that it has. We can certainly get that answer for you. Long and short of it is, the approval should be conditioned upon compliance, full compliance with all federal and state laws, which obviously we would comply with.
Thanks, guys.
And I don't know if any speaker is going to raise any issues that the board hasn't thought of yet, but if the board would like us to respond to any new issues raised by speakers, obviously we're happy to do so.
Thank you. You just took the words out of my mouth. Don't go too far, because there might be something that comes up from one of the, I think, 5 registered speakers who like I said, I think are all going to be voicing their concerns or being against it, so we might need you guys to answer some things that are brought up.
I was hoping I could provide very brief clarification on one thing that came up that I didn't get a chance to answer, which was the question about 4G and 5G. I remember that question coming up previously when a previous counselor had asked it of me, and the answer that I provided was the site is not going to be a 5G millimeter wave site like what you see being deployed in the cities. It's primarily a 4G service, but similar to all sites that transition from 1G to 2G to 3G, there is an evolution of the network. So I just wanted to provide some clarification. This is not a 5G millimeter wave site as we deploy in more dense urban areas.
Can I just ask what the concern is with 5G? I mean, why is there concern this might be a 5G site? Most towns, of course, are pushing Verizon to supply 5G and the fast output speeds that it does. What was the concern with 5G?
Impact on population. There's a lot of studies out there. It's controversial right now. It's not a settled science. So I'm asking the question that other residents are concerned about.
So it's a potential health concern?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm just going to put out there for what it's worth, there's a lot of information that shows that, I guess this isn't the place to debate it, but the 1996 Federal Telecom Act takes away any inquiry on health effects by local municipalities. So I'll just put that in the record.
I'm expressing the concern in my constituents.
Okay, well, I can't, there's 3 different pages, so I can't even go in order because I don't know which page was first. But we have, I don't know the first name, Ed, Phyllis, Andy, Tom, Lori Anderson, and Sue. Who would like to go first? The gentleman can, let the ladies go first, please. All right. So now the 3 of you have to argue over who's going first. And you can give your name and address, please.
Lori Anderson, 810 Lake Road, directly across from the proposed site. I was looking at the document that was referred to earlier. I am opposed to this particular site. Yes, I am a neighbor and it's personal. The 5 sites, this was the first night that I got a little more definition of why the Kwan site wasn't acceptable. I'm still not quite sure I get that. But the other 2 sites, as I had mentioned previously, that were proposed, that were sent a certified letter which was not answered. So basically, this was the only site that was considered. It was an orchard. A lot of the trees have been removed, so with not knowing exactly where this tower is going to go, it's not hidden in an orchard because now, currently, a lot of that orchard is missing. I don't know what the intentions of the landowners are, but currently a lot of this area on the corner of Pellet Road is currently used for a construction site, storing of materials that are needed for the Lake Road project, as well as a lot of equipment. So if a person was to go to this particular site at this particular moment, they would see a disaster. Why not put a cell tower there? This is not what this area has been for most of my lifetime. This is supposedly going to get cleaned up. I have confidence. The corner of Whiting Road and Lake Road was also used as a construction base point, and that was cleaned up adequately. So I'm sure that this will also, I'm hopeful, will return to a more natural state. So at that point, if this cell tower is built, it will be noticeable. In the documents, there was something in reference to screening. I don't know if that is going to be supplied by Verizon. It talks about that deciduous or evergreen trees should be planted to screen this from the public and from to make it more palatable for the local residents as well as for the scenic byway. I hope that that will be provided should this go ahead. It says in the comments, however, in the document that that's not necessary because this is an orchard. Like I said, those trees have been removed. So I think that should be addressed should this go forward at that point. It also talks about, which I'm still not adequately advised as to what's actually going to go there. In the lease, it talks about, as Mr. Cahill also referenced to, that there could be buildings, there could be additional towers, and that in the other parts of the document, it said that the first choice is to go to existing towers, existing establishments to try and upgrade, if you will. So once this site gets established, if it gets established, then this will be the foothold for future constructions and additional things. And I would like to know if there's, at this particular time, if there's buildings that will be attached to this site along with the cell tower. And I would also like an answer to a question, if there will be screening of deciduous or evergreen trees. It says it should be at least, within 2 years, that should be done. And if it's not adequately good soil or whatever, that a berm would be created for these trees to be established on it. So if I could have some clarification as to what Verizon will do to make this as palatable as possible for the residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. And I did, Josh, and I know, is the pictures, the rendition of what you'll see on this tower on our website? Because when Lori says, which I think you said you don't know where it's going on this site?
Sure.
Right at the end of our driveway.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna come up. I'd like this to pass around, all right? This is in the application package. That gives, they do balloons. That'll show you where the site is and what the view is from the different places. And that might answer a lot of those questions because it's proposed back in the trees. So if that hasn't been seen by people, I'm not sure. I know for the planning board, presentations are going to the planning board. There's a packet of visuals on our website. So pass that around. Who is next? Would that be Sue?
No, I've just got a question from Nicole.
Okay. So Sue, if you can come up and give your name and address.
Hi, my name is Sue Sigmund, 810 Lake Road, Webster.
No, I'm sorry. Lori, are you 810 also?
We're sisters.
Oh, that makes sense. I'm like, wait a minute, somebody wrote down the wrong address.
No, I know where you're.
Strike that from the record of our sisters. Unless they want that.
My question is, will there be interference from this at all? Is it outgoing things too? Because in my case, I have an antenna on the roof for my TV, and I do get Canada. and stuff like that. Now, will it all go away? I'm very curious.
I have to answer that if the board would like.
You got it.
The answer is no. These frequencies are all regulated, frequency and power are all regulated by the FCC. Should there ever be, and I've yet to run into the 30 years, should there ever be an interference issue, it means one of two things. It means either there's a equipment defect, malfunction, that we would want to know about, and the FCC requires us to correct it, or somebody else has equipment malfunction and they're interfering with our signal, in which case we would want to know it, we would want to have the
I
FCC.
didn't know if there would be a problem. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, and that's what it is. Yeah, so all these frequencies are separate. Should there be a problem, and there shouldn't be, that means that there is a malfunction somewhere, which has to be corrected under law, under federal law.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's one of the things. And I'm looking at the pictures that were sending around, and you know, they show the trees, and there's this big tower. I mean, I know you said you're not putting any lights on it at the moment, but will this change?
No. Lighting is regulated by the FAA. We're not allowed to put light, nor do we want to put on lighting, it's required to do by the FAA. And the only time you have to put lights on a tower is if you exceed 200 feet AGL, which we don't do, under 25 feet, or you're in an approach zone. There are instances where if you're very close to an airport, you get an approach zone. Neither of those two things are here, so there will not be lighting or FAA strike.
Next question.
Okay.
We have a lot of geese that fly at night.
I hate to say this, but.
You gotta speak in
people
the
at home-
microphone.
I'm sorry.
It's nice that you're having a very nice discussion, but nobody at home can hear you guys. Sorry. And I don't know if you guys can hear it either.
The next thing is, we have geese that do fly over the orchard at night. I mean, I'm out with the dog a lot, and they are flying there. Will this be a problem? Will we have geese that are gonna be running into that? What do you think?
Answer.
You're gonna get your exercise,
I
there,
guess.
my friend.
Good to stuff.
Yeah. 18 kills have come up over and over and over again. They came up more in the early 90s. And the long and short of it is that these do not cause 18 kill. And one way we know is because back 30 years ago, when this was a thought this might be an issue, there were studies done, surveys done, and they didn't find any 18 kills in their own towers.
This is not Pellet Road, this is,
That's 1183
this
Lake
is
Road.
Welcome Road, this is down in Ontario.
Yes, just to clarify, that is an existing tower that was approved in the town of Ontario.
Did I give out the wrong pictures?
Yes,
Yeah.
I believe you did.
This is the one that's on the corner by Slocum, right?
Correct.
So do you have something that shows where the Pellet Road
Yes.
tower would be?
With no antennas.
Correct, that one was just constructed last year. I provided it to the board just to get an idea of what something
I
similar.
apologize, I thought it was the copies of what was in the packet that showed there. Okay, because those are, I got it, these are the balloons. The pictures of, okay.
Correct. There are renderings of this particular site that were included as a part of the application package. They are on our town website. Correct, that's it.
Yeah, can't miss this. Big honking ugly tower.
Okay. Well, now you can have that nice pictures, unless you want to get them back. I thought they were just replications of what's in this package. And, sorry about that. Okay. All right. Andy, is your sister here too? Because I see 2 820 Lake Roads.
That'd be no way. My wife.
And you are a
Shuttle is a
brave guy. Okay. So are you gonna let your wife speak
Please,
first?
please do. Please first.
Okay. And
I was glad to sign up.
where is she? Is she behind the, this beam gets me every time, Val, you know?
From that Phyllis, 820 Lake Road. I don't want to repeat what everyone said and what Andy's here to say, but I'll provide my jaded opinion after having lived here for 27 years. After listening to all of these meetings, it seems to me we're here to do what Verizon says we should do, because they can't even tell us if it's a 4G or a 5G tower, lost in the semantics of where it belongs. And I think that's kind of unfortunate that we're going to permanently scar probably the most beautiful part of Webster without really having answers to some of the questions that we've asked that are pretty straightforward and simple. Is it a 4G, is it a 5G tower? And then they get into the semantics of why that even matters to us. Well, can't they just answer the question? And is there going to be some sort of barrier with trees that are put up or not? Well, it's in the lease, but that doesn't mean they'll do it. So I'm just here to say, I understand you guys will be doing your best to sort this out, but I really have very little faith and confidence. We're not here to argue that, boy, aren't we lucky we're just getting one tower and not 12, like Pittsburgh. We're here to answer the question, is this proper for Webster? Thank you.
Thanks. Well, that leaves Andy and Tom.
Go ahead, Andy, we'll do it alphabetical.
An arm wrestle?
Hi there, I'm Andy Opar, it's 820 Lake Road. Hey, I'm glad that Mr. Bergdorf said that he'd be willing to go back and look at it if it can be done better, because I think that's a real possibility. I think if you look first off at the paperwork that they submitted, looking at it, I mean, there's some inaccuracies in it. For example, they, as I said before, they said the Kiwanis site is a mile south of the proposed Lake Road site. It's not. It's about 2,500 feet. And just looking throughout the other documents, they ask, well, this it won't create any pollution. Are there any adverse effects on the neighborhood? No, it's going to be give us great cell service. I think these answers to the paperwork is obviously, to use a legal term, I guess, self-serving. I don't know if these papers are submitted as sworn documents under penalties of perjury. I don't know, but I obviously they're very tilted in favor of their proposal. But as far as pollution, yes, there is pollution. There's clear visual pollution. If you look at the color pictures of how it's going to look, that thing just isn't a couple inches above the tree line. It's way above there. It's very, very visible, and that's a problem. As many folks have mentioned, this is a scenic byway. New York State passed that legislation and put a responsibility on localities to uphold that and maintain the integrity of the scenic byways. This tower that is less than a quarter mile away, it does not maintain the integrity of the scenic byways. It is a blight, it is a scar. It does not reflect the intent of the New York State Legislature on that topic. As far as the issue of has Verizon thoroughly explored all the alternative sites, I really don't get that feel from reading the documentation. I get the feel that our friends at Blue Sky Verizon came upon this site, and I know it was at least a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years, maybe more, said, wow, this is a great site. We got somebody who's going to lease to us. It's easy to get to. It meets our technical guidelines. Hey, forget it. This is the spot. This is the bomb. Let's go for it. And I think all the other so-called sites that they explored, I think were more of an afterthought. That's the impression I have, that there was not vigorous evaluation of all the alternatives. And I understand it. I understand. Verizon Blue Sky wants to do what's easy for Verizon Blue Sky. That's human nature. That's rational. I understand it. But it is the duty of the town board to thoroughly look and evaluate. Are there potentially other options out there? Is there something that provides better balance, that allows these folks to upgrade the cell phone service while not being such a big negative to this neighborhood? So, and again, we've got the scenic byway. We want to protect that. We've got the lakefront property. There's $10 million worth of property on that lakefront. Guess what happens to property values when you put this big, ugly tower up there? And again, for me, it's less than a quarter mile from my house. And most of the others, it's about a quarter mile or so. It's easily visible. It's right there. It's a problem. And so I would encourage the town, and I understand the attorney says, well, you've got to respect, we're a utility, and there's this Rosenberg court case, and you've got to sign off on this and allow this. Well, I think that's kind of a half-truth. Yes, they are treated as a utility, and that means the town cannot outright ban cell towers from the town, but the town can restrict and limit so that there's balance between the interests of the cell phone folks and the interests of the property owners and residents of the area. So I'm asking the town, our elected leaders here, to really carefully evaluate this and consider, maybe you gotta go back, maybe you need some more time, maybe we need to table and adjourn this to allow the Verizon folks to really demonstrate that they have done due diligence and for a fact that there really is no other possible option, not just the easy option for them, but maybe there's an option, it's a little more work for them, but it's off the Lake Road scenic byway, and it's not doing so much damage to property values. So, again, I would ask the town to do that, if we need to delay this a little bit, to go back to Verizon and more carefully see what other options there are. I think then it's going to be a win-win if we get it away from that prime real estate spot, and so they can have their better cell phone service, and we can protect the interests of the scenic byway and of the residents on Lake Road.
Thanks, Andy.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add one of Andy's points. If you read into the Great Lakes Seaway Trail, one of their goals they have delineated is to protect and enhance the scenic, natural, and cultural resources of the Seaway Trail region. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Councilman Cahill.
I don't know if I can write as fast as they can talk. I hope you can.
I know I can't write as fast as Tom talks, so.
You won't have to. I'll write you a synopsis and
Oh,
send it
boy.
to you.
Is it going to be in Latin again?
No. I went to Irish Catholic school,
That's,
being Gaelic. All right, you ready?
we are ready, Tom.
Good evening, thank you. My name's Tom Roth. I live at 800 Lake Road. And thank you first for the communications. Great. You guys sent postcards out. You guys have been emailing, and it's a big help for us, and we want to thank you for that. I have a couple of housekeeping issues first. Tom, you might want to charge your battery up. I've been there 12 years. I can't say I've had any more than 3 or 4 roaming issues, but that might be something you want to consider. Secondly, I agree, Andy, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for Verizon and their due diligence. I do have a couple of concerns. One is you will not find a better site. Go down the road, turn right, plow it, do it, put it in. It's simple. And I understand why it's such an enviable site from a business operations standpoint. But I want to talk about something that I think is easily glossed over. I wrote a letter to board about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I shared an experience I had in the big woods. And I hope you've all read it. Yeah. It was about stewardship. And stewardship is your greatest responsibility. You're stewards to the town, you're stewards to the residents of the town, you're stewards to the history of the town, and you're stewards to the legacy and the future. It is tempting to jump to the technology side of the equation. Gee, I didn't get a call. Cell service is bad. I think there's something that we have to look at much more strongly. And in my letter I said to you, the town of Georgia Gosnell felt very strongly about the legacy of this village and this town. Very strongly. To the point that my next door neighbor bought their house. I bought my house from the Gosnells. They asked a couple of very easy and specific questions to me. Tom and Aaron, we've known you a long time. What are you going to do with the house? I said, we're going to remodel it and live in it. You're not going to tear it down. No, thank you. We're all set. That was it. When they met with Mark and Marcia Seward, that whole piece of property was drawn up for 9 different lots. 9 lots. They sold it to the Sewards because they were keeping it intact. They took less money, but they sold it to them so they could keep it intact. They were stewards of their property. And they made sure that people that they passed it on to, not sold it, passed it on to, were stewards also. They're stewards of the big woods, the big field, all that. We're blessed. We are absolutely blessed to have this opportunity here in our town. It enriches our town, it enriches our culture, it attracts people to our town. Is a cell tower important to have there? In some people's mind it is. In mine it is not. It is so far from important to me. And I would think that many of you would think the same thing. I understand the logic of not in my backyard. I get it. This is not in our backyard, it's in our community, it's in our trust. It's a Genesee Valley Land Trust. These people feel strongly about what we have. Towns would die to have the town, the opportunity of the assets that we have a stone's throw away. I find it hard to believe, but I'm not saying they haven't. And please, I find it hard to believe that that is the only spot that the cell tower will work. I find it hard to believe. This is 2021. I find it very hard to believe. Now, it may be, but I would think that another part about it is it's very convenient. And I also wanted to ask a question, Tom. You mentioned that this is a part of a thing to lock up that land. What does that mean?
That the Bowens, and I don't think that it's, confidential at all, they would love to see the 8 or 9 parcels that aggregate up to 62 acres that they own there on the corner of Pellet and Lake be put into some structure that there will never be development there. And they have, because I went to every house, including theirs, and they said, look, this helps us keep this green, but we want to talk more with the town and the school district about some historical aspects and having a learning center there. And we're in the middle of dealing with a green space committee and the Friends of Webster Trails and a referendum for 2022 that we're pointing toward for the purchase.
So this could be a trade-off.
I didn't say that.
I know you didn't, that's why I said it could be. It's a slippery slope, that's what I'm driving at.
I think, Tom, I gotta say, and I think the Bowens, they're salt of the earth people, unless I am a terrible judge of character, okay, which is possible. I believe them when they say they'd like to see those 62 acres, them not having to sell it, keep it in the family, and keep it green, and not develop it.
Okay.
There are challenges in the world that they have on that, and I said, look,
But
we'll sit down and talk.
that's not for any of us
right?
to legislate or to litigate, or that's their issue. The facts of the matter on the table today is a cell tower adjacent to a piece of land that's part of the Genesee Valley Trust. And my point that I made earlier, and I feel strongly about it, as you know, is that this is an absolute gem and should be taken and coveted and nurtured for the residents, not only today, not only tomorrow, but for the future of our town. So I ask you to consider that strongly, and I want to thank you again for your time.
Thanks.
You've all been very generous. Thank you.
Any comments, questions from the board before I close out the first public hearing?
Yes, the topic that was just discussed, I think whatever decision we come to, whether that land gets developed or not, has not got a thing to do with what we're talking about.
It doesn't, and Barry, I'm glad you said it.
And it shouldn't have been said.
I just wanted to, I'm asking you a question.
Yeah.
I may not be a lot of things, I may be a lot of things. I'm going to answer somebody's question when they ask me.
Well, you brought it up. I didn't.
But you asked the question. So we can play
Okay, let's
tennis
just
all
leave it
day
there.
long.
I'll play tennis.
You asked the question, I answered it. So, what time did the public hearing start?
I have a question.
7:40, well, we're not done yet.
In section E, page 14, I was wondering, what are the FCC restrictions on emissions toward Camden that disallow utilizing the Crown Castle facility at 790 Kermit Road?
There are FCC limits in terms of power and frequency. I can't tell you what they are. I need to have, and I don't know if Mike, they don't do it off the top of their head, but.
Specifically related to the Crown Castle location, it's simply not geographically located for us to be able to fill in the coverage there. There is our justification maps that show how that particular location does not fill in the gap. It doesn't cover the primary objectives. As far as how that affects the Canada question, so the site that we're proposing is somewhat in the shape of a T. Okay, so you're going to have a sector pointing east and west on Lake Road and one to the south. When you locate the site too far south, that's called a null. So the null is tolerable if we're close enough to the lakeshore. If we move too far south, we can't have that type of a null between sectors. We have to end up pointing a sector towards Canada. And that's unfortunately what we're into trouble all along the lakeshore. It's not exclusive to Webster.
Does that also interfere with the site to the southwest?
If the crown site, because of its location, is too close to the existing Plum Road site, so there's a lot of overlapping coverage between the two. And when that happens, we actually degrade, because every LTE site all uses the same frequencies. So Plum Road and the Webster Park site are going to be all the exact same frequencies. That's just how LTE works. So those same frequencies, when they're too close together, they actually interfere with each other. So that's one of the other problems with the crown location. Is too much overlap, causes interference. Not only does it not fix the problem area, but actually degrades other areas that would otherwise be okay without that site. That comes back to the honeycomb pattern that Bob was talking about earlier, why it's necessary to be located specifically in one area versus another.
If you look at Exhibit E, we show where the crown tower is, and you can see it's actually in between this proposed site and the site to the southwest. So it's a whole other cell, honeycomb cell over, if you will.
Any consideration given to Webster Park, or is that
In what regard?
location itself?
Location, so on the county park, that you're not allowed to place the tower, and I don't know what the legalities is currently.
How is it from an RF standpoint?
We'll be able to cover it much better once we have the site. So a lot of those parkland areas, all the trails will be in reference. You know, I think about, my kids out there geocaching with scouts and somebody falling down a hill, breaking a leg, and need to call 911 and you can. There's other sides to the argument of, impacting the park area. Everybody's entitled to be able to use, emergency services.
Thanks.
I would just offer one thing that the board would like from what Mr. Roth had suggested, and I'm sorry, I didn't get the other gentleman's name, but they both suggested there's an alternate spot. And one gentleman said he felt there was just a better spot. I encourage both of you to read Exhibits E and F, what was submitted, and read those thoroughly. And if you've got a better suggestion that talks about the parameters, I encourage you to call me. My number's on there. And, we'll look. And sometimes we do find it wouldn't be the first time. But we can't just go away. And you can't just say there must be a better site out there. You're going to have to come up with an alternative. We will check that alternative. And I encourage you, if you do want to do that, to do it soon, because we have a federal shot clock that ends on November
I
7th.
understand that. We're not engineers.
Well, I-
You know, so I don't know
But
that that's.
you're not an engineer, but.
Tom, can you please sit down? I'll tell you what, let's close out this, okay? Let's close out this one. And I can't believe I'm about to say this, but we have a second one. We did say, hopefully we're not gonna sit here for another hour and basically hear the same thing that we heard in the first meeting. If there's new information that is specific, basically to the height of this, that's what will be in the second public hearing. But for now, this public hearing heard the proposed telecommunication tower for a special use permit is closed. All right. Now, Charlie, can I rattle right in?
Sure.
All right, I am going to open the public hearing for a height variance for a proposed 125-foot tall telecommunications tower at 833 Lake Road.
Does the applicant want to speak to that?
It'll be 60 seconds. In the application for the height variance, there is a section that shows how we meet the standards for a height variance. And the reason for that is to provide adequate coverage. There is no reason to build this taller than is necessary, other than to get service. There's no advantage to build this taller. There's a disadvantage, though. It's got to be, the height needs to be in order to provide proper service. So in a nutshell, that's what you see in here. And that's why it's 25 feet higher. That's what's necessary. 100 feet, it fits. And Mr. Crosby's here to explain that in greater detail if the board would like. It's all set forth in the application. And we meet the standards both under state and federal law for that.
Would the board like Mr. Crosby to out there to ask any questions on that height? Okay. What's today? October 2nd? I wish I would have put together a timeline of what has happened since 3 months ago on, I think, July 7th, the application first came in. I'm going to close out the public hearing. I got to tell you something. I'm proud of the due diligence that is being done on this. That's the best I can say.
Before you close, make sure there isn't anybody who wants to speak.
Well, the people that signed up to speak have gotten up unless...
I actually have a couple items that are non-duplicative, if that's all right.
Andy, jump in there. I never want to be said that I shut you down before
No,
you're done.
no. Yeah, I have to echo Tom. Again, my appreciation to the board. I think you folks have been open-minded and willing to listen and really look at this. It gives me a little bit of hope about our government and allays some of the fears that folks have about our elected officials. But anyway, with respect to the tower, Mr. Crosby had said, hey, this the Kiwanis site, it's too far south in the paperwork that they submitted. And again, this is why I kind of question how diligent they were in going through all and evaluating all these sites. Their paperwork says the Kiwanis site is a mile south of the Lake Road, proposed Lake Road site. Several times, I've just kind of double-checked that, and I'm coming up with less than half a mile. I'm coming up with about 2,500 feet. So, for what it's worth, I'm not coming up with the same numbers, and okay, maybe there's an explanation. Again, the submissions from Blue Sky Verizon are very self-serving, but I don't really, and maybe the town can dig into this some more. I don't really see where they've documented the dates and when they did this and what the results were. They just kind of immediately come to a conclusion. Oh, wait, we looked at this site, it didn't work. End of story. So, I'm a CPA like Tom in background, and we all about kind of verify and and document and corroborate what folks are presenting to us. So I'm asking the town to do that. Second thing about the trees, I mean, I've got the picture of this big tower, and it is on the website, and they give you some nice pictures of what it'll look like. And all this talk of planting trees, and there's some surrounding trees, you look at the thing, it's way, way, way above the tree line. This is not creeping above the peaks of the pines. It stands out there big and ugly for everybody to see for a long ways away, and again, on scenic byway. I had a question also, if, and I looked at the lease as Mr. Cahill did. It is a very open lease. It allows them to do all sorts of things, add microwaves and dishes and antenna and who knows what on there, changing to 4G to 5G to 6G, whatever. I mean, it's pretty open-ended. I guess that's how it is. But it talks about a removal bond in the lease, and I don't know if there is a removal bond, and perhaps they can address that if, let's say, technology changes and somehow this thing is outmoded. The cell tower is so 2020, and 10 years from now, and it's no longer useful. Well, it allows the landlord to ask them to remove it, but if Verizon wants to, if the landlord's a little desperate and they tell them, hey, listen, we'll give you 50 grand if we don't have to take this thing down, so just leave it there. So there's nothing there that really guarantees that should this thing become obsolete, that it has to come down. It's really contingent upon the landlord of the property, and it's not built into the agreement. That's really it. I told you I wouldn't be duplicative, and that's what it is. But folks, just dig into this thing some more, please. You've got a couple more weeks. If you need more time, I would encourage you to take more time instead of having this thing just pushed through. When we first found out about this by accident. We weren't mailed letters. We just happened to see a couple signs up there, and we thought it was related to something to the farm. And actually, Nanette was the one who first said, golly, what are those signs about? And we finally dug into it, and she said, hey, wait a minute. What the heck? There's a huge industrial tower that's going to be coming up right on Lake Road. So I'm a little concerned about the notification process. I know you guys may be looking for a little better efficiency, but this one almost slipped by most of us. But more than that. So thanks.
Thank you very much for your input.
I say two questions. Can you show us where I can't find the 1 mile under the Kiwanis. I'm not showing a mile. Can you show us where in the application?
I've got I'll try to pull
Remember,
it up.
guys,
Okay.
nobody can hear you.
I'm sorry.
Nobody can hear you.
This part of the thing is called.
Within the submissions from Blue Sky Verizon, I'll diligently look for it here. They submitted that the Kiwanis site was 1 mile south of the proposed Lake Road site, which I think is factually inaccurate. Again, I've clocked it.
Well, if it says that, I can tell you it's factually inaccurate, because remember I said I walked a half mile in each direction, I walked down to Shangri-La.
Yeah.
Exactly a half mile in.
We're showing
Shangri-La.
it's 760 Shangri-La Lane. I'm not saying anything about a mile. But anyway, as long as it's located properly in the, on the propagation study, so if you show us where it is, I'd appreciate it.
I'll see. It was in the submission, so I remember saying it.
The other question I had for Tom was, is this tape or is there a transcript?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. We've got our audience so far, so unless any other questions, comments from the board, I am going to close out the second public hearing. And 2 weeks from tonight, tentatively, we are scheduled to vote on the, the special use permit and the height variance. And I am sure that over the next 2 weeks, the board. Oh, Bill. Bill, I don't want you reading.
I'll be out of the brainwave.
Well, that's the thing. I don't want you reading anything when you're on anesthesia, all right? I need your comments when you're lucid, all right?
They don't change much.
Councilman Abbott is, oh boy. Councilman Abbott is becoming more,
Very proud.
he's becoming more bionic in the next week. Let's just leave it at that. Okay, so now, oh jeez. Now we are on to, yeah. Okay, now, the next section of the board meeting, which is usually the first section of the board meeting when we don't have public hearings, is if anybody from the floor would like to get on the podium to discuss anything except for the items that we went over in the public hearing. Is there anybody that has something they would like to get on the podium and talk about to the board, ask to the board?
If I have a thing for a fence,
You got you, because we got
I
yeah, because, no, that's okay, and I think it'll get better.
And thank you for your patience.
Yes, okay, so, yes, we have 2 sets of minutes for approval, I have read them both, I make a motion that we approve the September 9th Town Board Workshop minutes.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye?
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Cattolik? Aye.
And I also read the September 16th regular board meeting minutes, and I make a motion we accept those.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Cattolik? Aye.
Phil, it wasn't you, was it? That did the bills?
I know that you were doing
Yes, you do know that.
Oh my goodness.
Just scared me.
I was just waiting to see.
I know, but they pointed to me, just scared me.
Bill, don't tell me.
I'm very concerned, anybody here, like, I lost confidence in my memory. I
That's
was
all right. I
passed
did,
by you when you were doing the bills the other day.
yes,
Great.
I was in and I reviewed the bills. Everything seemed to be in order, and I would make a motion that we pay the bills.
Second.
Councilwoman Cattolik? Aye. Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye. And believe it or not, I do remember reviewing the prepaid warrants as submitted by Paul Adams, Director of Finance, and I make a motion we approve those.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye?
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Cattolik? Aye.
All right, well, guess what? I think this, is this about the fence?
Yeah.
You, my friend. Is this 1589 Brattleboro?
Correct.
You are up on the podium. And if you can give your name and address, please?
My name is Tom DeLeo, I live at 1589 Brattleboro Drive. I'm a new resident to Webster. We were looking to put a fence up on the property. After we purchased the house, we found out there were a couple of water easements on it. And so that's when I started investigating with the town. Exactly what that meant. I didn't know that, I messed up with that. I tried to figure out how we could get a fence without causing any problems, especially being residents. I spoke with Pat, the highway superintendent, I believe. He had come out, check the property, and to see if we can come to some sort of agreement that he could put forward to the town that wouldn't cause any problems. I believe we came up with something that is suitable, and that's why I'm here tonight.
Okay, thanks, Tom. I just noticed, I remember this. You were in the process of buying the house when this first came before us, and I think we didn't table it, we canceled it because you hadn't closed yet.
Correct.
And so did you guys notice the last page where Pat Stevens back in early August, our highway superintendent, said that your plan looks very feasible, but we have to loop back with Pat for a formal letter. Did we get a formal letter?
Yes.
Mr. DeLeo, are you the owner, or are you an owner with your wife, or is it?
My wife and I.
Okay.
Me and my wife, correct.
You both are the owner?
Correct.
Okay. And her name is Lauren?
Yes.
If it's approved, I will prepare the documents and I'll send them to you for your signature and your wife's.
Okay.
All right.
So there is a letter from Pat.
Yep, no, I see it now.
Talking about a 10-foot gate in the aluminum fence section is shown on the sketch. The gate removable nature of the split rail fence will allow adequate access to the area along the drainage course so that it can be maintained as needed in the
Okay. Well, now that I saw Highway Superintendent Pat Stevens' letter, I don't have any other questions. Barry? No?
No?
As long as everything's okay with Pat and with engineering and DPW, I'm good.
Attorney Jesse, do you mind reading
No.
highlights of this
No,
proposal?
we'll go to certain. Thomas and Lauren DeLeo, the owners of property located at 1589 Brattleboro Road, Town of Webster, tax ID number 050.02-2-35. They applied to erect a combination temporary and removable split rail and permanent aluminum 4-foot high fence with a gate in the aluminum fence section upon the 30-foot drainage easement, which has been granted to the town. In conformance with the height setback requirements set forth in the code. In the event that you do not meet those, you will apply for variance, and no fence will be put up until the variance is granted. But right now, 4 feet high is sufficient, it's within the code. The applicants have requested relief from the Webster Town Board to permit the fence and gate to exist and encroach upon the easement. The town board has the authority to grant the relief if the town board feels that there is limited detriment to the town, and considering all other relevant factors, the board can allow the construction of the temporary removable split rail and the permanent aluminum fence and gate to exist upon the approach to the easement effective 1589 Brattleboro Road, Town of Webster. The fence will encroach upon the easement as proposed, as shown on the survey map prepared by Land Tech Surveying and Planning Company, dated August 9, 2021, which I presume was created for the purpose of your purchase. Right?
Can you say that question one more time?
All right. The map that we have is dated August 9, 2021.
Okay.
That I assume was the survey map used for your purchase.
There was 2 survey maps, the one when we closed, and I had to get one through the Freedom of Information Act. They're a little bit off from each other, the new one versus the old one, so I'm not sure.
Which is the more recent one? That's the one we're going to attach, so it's important. You don't have to discuss it now, just get the more recent one.
I did give the most recent one
Okay,
to
and it should have the fence drawn on it.
Yes, correct.
Fence and gate will not be expanded to further encroach on or in the easement, nor will it be removed or moved from its permitted place within the easement, as shown on the instrument survey map. Upon the destruction or demolition of the fence or the gate or any part of them through natural causes or otherwise, the owners of the fence and gate will not reconstruct either without a specific resolution of the town board authorizing its replacement or reconstruction. In the event of an emergency, if the town deems it necessary or imperative, the town will have the right to remove or take down any part of the fence or gate without recourse by the owners or successors or assigns to such removal or taking down. And the owner of the proposed fence and gates and the town will enter into a licensing agreement incorporating all the conditions of this resolution in form and substances approved by me, which will further provide the owner will record, actually I will take care of it. You're going to pay for it, to record the licensing agreement with the Monroe County Clerk's Office.
Okay.
That's my motion.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilwoman Cody?
Aye.
Councilman Cato?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Allen?
Aye.
We have a fence.
Oh, great.
And Charlie, Attorney Gillespie will guard.
Yeah, underneath?
Yes.
Okay.
I need my card right now. You have my information. My phone number, my email, all that stuff.
Should I, a few weeks go by, should I be concerned?
Don't be concerned, but feel free to call me.
We're all set.
We got a lot of other stuff.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you for
Sorry.
your time, I
I
appreciate it.
hope you enjoyed your night.
It was new.
Good.
It was good.
It's
Thank you.
educational, right? All right. Next item. It's kind of interesting because I don't think we legally have to do this, but I think it's in our best practice as we move forward with Sandbar Park. To do a board resolution to advertise this public meeting. I can't stress that enough, public meeting. It's not a public hearing, it's a public meeting. So I'm going to make this resolution, unless the board has any questions or comments before I make this motion. Make a motion to advertise a public meeting for the Sandbar Park project in the Wednesday, October 13th Webster Herald edition, and to set the public meeting for Thursday, October 28th, between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. at the Webster Thomas Auditorium.
Before we go on that, mine says October 12th.
Yep, that's why I changed it, because I think
Wednesday is the 13th.
Wednesday is the 13th, that was a typo.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Capelli?
Aye.
That will replace our workshop then. Okay. That's that. Okay, is 4 and 5, is Josh and or Mary, or,
Yeah, I can speak to that.
okay?
So, and Councilman Dean, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But it's my understanding that every year when we take either temporary or permanent dedication of new roads, we submit them to New York State. It helps with funding for the snow removal services that the town highway department provides. So we have 5 roads that are being temporary dedicated that total just under 0.7 miles. And then 2 roads that are being permanently dedicated that total about 0.45 miles. And the difference is that the temporary dedicated roads have not been topped with their final pavement. So they're still being construction done in those subdivisions, but there are residents living within them, so that's why we take temporary dedication. And then the permanent dedication is after the road has been topped and either all or the majority of the homes have been built and sold to residents.
Yeah, the reason for taking temporary dedication is for power. Okay. And permanent dedication is so it's part of the inventory. And then we take those roads in, so it's all been cambered, everything's been inspected, it's all ready to go, and that's, we're ready to go.
All right, in 3 months, what are we gonna do when Barry's not here to ask that question?
Next
Well, that's
one.
why we have to put him on the spot now.
Phone a friend.
We can phone a friend, can't we? All right.
I'm gonna speak up.
We're gonna put a red phone at your house. Well, he's gonna be on anesthesia. I'm not calling him.
I'll be back before very.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay. Well, I think between Mary and Barry, and that was, I think, a great explanation of why we're doing these 2 resolutions. Is anybody have any questions, comments? Okay, then I would, Charlie, is it best to make the motion and name each of the 4 roads, 5 roads? Yeah. Okay. So I make a motion to consider taking temporary dedication of the following roads. Briarwood, section 2B. The street name is Woodsview Drive. And it goes from Woodsview Drive to the cul-de-sac, approximately 0.07 miles. Second road is Stonebridge subsection, sub-extension to section 4. The street name is Shallowbrook Terrace. It is approximately 0.11 miles. The third temporary is Stonebridge sub-extension section 5. It is Shallowbrook Terrace also. It is approximately 0.08 miles. And the fourth is the Meadows section 5. Street name is Grand Meadows Way, and Quail Creek Trail. Between the 2, approximately 0.43 miles. That is my motion.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Capelli?
Aye.
Come on, Barry, don't you want as a highway guy, one last dedication motion of the road?
Patty's liaison.
Well, that's a good point too, I mean,
I would move that we take, the town takes permanent dedication of Anna Circle, 0.35 miles, 1,831 feet, the subdivision of Westwood Estates 1, from Salt Road to cul-de-sac. The second street is Providence Drive, 0.09 miles, 450 feet, subdivision Providence Estates 7, section 6 to section 1 connection.
Second.
Councilman Cody?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Supervisor Cleary?
Aye. Okay, let's see, who has 1078? On the sign-in sheet, who's here for the film permit at 1078 Michael Drive?
Can't see him.
Name,
Post, on the
name.
other side of the post.
There you go. Well, my friend, you are up.
Don't be afraid.
Mike Palmieri, I live at 1078 Michael Drive. I need a permit to fill areas of my backyard. I have Mill Creek running through it, and there's some part of the floodplain. So I submitted a plan to Pat and Mary, which they were okay with. So I'd like to get going and get that and move forward with the project. It's pretty self-explanatory.
Your artwork is
I
impressive.
was just gonna say, I'm just.
I thought it was, I did that, yeah.
You drew
It
this?
is.
I drew that. Believe it or not.
Did your kids help you?
Holy cow.
No,
I mean, that's
I had to
impressive.
fight him off a little bit.
Very nice.
It was basically a house I bought that was in foreclosure a few years ago, and it was neglected for a very, very long time. The backyard, everything, it's just been eroding away. You know, like the concrete on the back of the pool, I mean, the picture, it's what it looks like. I mean, the pool's gonna fall down the hill eventually if something's not done, so it's getting pretty bad.
Mary, you're all documenting yours. Thumbs up, right?
Yes, we discussed it, it's obviously a little bit trickier film permit situation just because he is on the border of the floodplain and he has the creek in his backyard, but we talked about the conditions of the permit and how to move forward with it, and we're on the same page.
I marked off the floodplain and marked off, and it actually ended up being more room than I thought I actually had by a couple of feet, so it should be relatively easy in that aspect, staying out of it.
Okay.
What was your scale that you used on this? Quarter inch, foot?
Yeah, that was eyeball scale.
Great work, Mike. Very,
Thanks.
very comprehensive. Mary, thanks for taking a look at this and submitting your approval. I have no problem whatsoever.
Yeah, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but how old are your kids?
18 months. I have one 18-month-old
That's interesting,
son.
because some of this looks like crayon. I figured he's got to have like 5.
It was his colored pencils.
7-year-olds. Is that colored pencils? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry. Well, I would make a motion that we approve the fill permit at 1078 Michael Drive in Webster.
Second.
Supervisor Cleary?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilman Cody?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Thank you.
Take care, Mike.
Love you.
Thank you.
All right, and is it my Nick or Nicholas? Nicholas, this is a fill permit, and we're not going to penalize you for not having artistry of mine, all right? We usually don't see that, so. You can give your name and
Nicola, 232 Woodsview Drive. I recently put in an in-ground pool. My
yard faces off in the back, so the whole back of the pool is exposed. I've been doing it myself, so without a contractor, I neglected to realize I needed a fill permit. I started bringing in dirt. I have a truck and a dump trailer. I was trying to build up the back corner of, actually both back corners of the pool need to be filled up, so I got finished putting a fence in and button this up before the winter.
And another, what I can see here.
Yes, we met with him a couple weeks ago, and I actually sent an email to the board right after that meeting, just to let you know the situation. And he's already started stabilizing his slopes on the side, and it won't negatively affect any of the neighborhood drainage because there is a catch basin on the upstream side of his property that will catch anyone in the common soil upstream, and he's still sloped to the same way that he was before. So if there wasn't the catch basin, there would be issues, but luckily that was there. And yeah, I think there's a little room for improvement on the pool permits. I've noticed a little bit that there's no grading plan on the pool permit, so it's hard to tell sometimes if there is going to be fill needed at the end. So we're going to work with the building department to try and make that a little more clear when we get those stuff.
Is he gonna require a fence permit as well?
He has that.
Okay.
So Mary, one of the, under general notes, you could contact the building department for final pool inspection once complete. Relocate shed to comply with zoning code once fence is installed. Is there a follow-up on checking the fill work that's being done to be sure that it complies with what the plan was?
Yes, on the fill permits, it's asked that they reach out to the engineering department once the grading is done, and then we review the grading, and then once it's has 80% germination, they're asked to call again, because we'd like them to check that the grading complies before they seed it, and they don't have to rip out grass and things like that. So, yep.
Any comments, questions? Other than that? Okay. Well, then I make a motion to approve a fill permit at 232 Woodsview Drive in Webster.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Capelli?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
You're all set, Nick? Thanks. All righty, well. The ash trees, boy, I'll tell you. Bill, do you think this will be the last year we'll be doing this?
No.
You don't? I was really hoping you were gonna say, no, I think we're good, this will be it.
So all the ash trees on town property are down, we're doing it, till they're all down.
When this first started, they said when it was all done, there wouldn't be an ash tree alive in New York State.
So, well, it's been a long night, so I won't hold up things. I will say that I was over in the gravel ridge area the other day in this nice little private drive off of gravel, and the guy said that the 4 neighbors had 90 ash trees on their properties that they had to take down. 4 neighbors combined. And they're starting the process of, replanting trees, not ash trees. 90. So this is affecting everybody. Private homeowners are having to spend money on having ash trees removed. Last year, I think the town had 400 plus either cut down or canopy on town land. Is that about correct, Paul? I think the aggregate is about $150,000.
It's about 150.
Yeah. So I guess the good news is that this year, we think ended up in around 200 trees? 193 is the total, right? Yeah, okay. And Dolly, you had opened up the sealed bids, and We had 3 of them. And tonight, based on those bids, unless the board has any question about these bids, we are going to award this contract to Birch Crest. We got awarded it last year, so we know what they do. I think they did a good job last year. Unless I'm missing something, this is, they're the low bid. There's no ambiance to this. Why wouldn't we accept that? This is not a, there's no other trick to this.
No, pretty straightforward.
You put it out to bid.
Okay.
What was their bid?
Their bid was, between the two, it looks like 82,700. Now, Patty, you wouldn't mind making this motion because I'm involved in signing the contract. You could put the dollar amount in there too.
Sorry, it was
82,700 for 193 trees.
So I would make a motion that, first of all, the legal notice was placed in the Webster Herald on September 8th for solicitation of bids for ash tree trimming, cutting, and select removal services for the town of Webster, where the town clerk opened sealed bids for the services on September 23rd, 2021, at 11:05 prevailing time. 3 bids were publicly opened and read aloud. The lowest bid, by quite a bit actually, was Birch Crest Tree and Landscape for a total of $82,700, removal of 193 trees. I would move the bid be awarded to Birch Crest Tree and Landscape.
You just finish off with authorizing yours truly.
And that the town supervisor is authorized to sign a contract with Birch Crest Tree and Landscape.
No, sir.
Councilwoman Cosarelli? Aye. Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill? Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye. I was taught I wasn't supposed to make motions where I get to sign the contract. Kind of makes sense. So, all right, we're coming down the home stretch here. Well, I recognize Mr. Salamano. Is Mr. Naka here? Hey.
How are you?
Good. Well, I'll tell you what, a couple weeks ago, we kind of put the brakes on this thinking, well, we're not going back to the planning board per the planning board's letter until October 19th. So we just wanted to get a little more information about this donation of land. I guess, does the town board have any questions on this, comments? I know that 2 weeks ago, unfortunately, this document wasn't in your packet, so you hadn't gotten a chance to see the planning board's recommendation.
Correct.
Now you've seen it.
I'm fine.
Does that clear the path here?
Yes. As far as I'm concerned.
You're ready, aren't you?
I'm available.
So I remember you were up there last time and all that. I don't know if you need to get up there and say anything.
I just have one clarification.
Well, then,
May I?
John, you know, I mean, jump up.
Thank you.
Good evening, my name is John Naka. I was just shown the actual engineer's drawing this evening for the first time. We've been going back and forth. The sticking point between myself, who's selling a portion of this land to the Salamanos, and the rest that I'm proposing to donate, has to do with this ingress and egress easement, which in my mind, because you already own, or the town already owns land surrounding the parcel in question, doesn't seem necessary at all. You have access, the town has access to the entire parcel at other points. It's important to me, though, in terms of the donation, in terms of valuation. So I just want to be, my appraiser tells me that when I donate to the town, if the town accepts it, it needs a 25-foot ingress and egress easement for valuation purposes. What the town does with that easement after it's transferred to the town is of utmost importance, and I don't want to speak for the Salamanos, but I'm assuming is of utmost importance to them. They don't want an easement at all. So, in my mind, when I look at this whole process, I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to sell 3.5 acres to this private buyer, donate the balance of approximately 10 acres to the town with an easement that would be revoked or waived by the town because it's not necessary. It serves the private buyer's interests, it serves my interests, and it doesn't seem like it really affects the town at all. Because it's not just an independent parcel that I'm donating, it actually abuts, town land actually surrounds this parcel to a large extent. So that's the only clarification that I want to make. And I don't think that's really been nailed down from the beginning between ourselves. Does that make sense?
It might. There's a lot of meat on the bone there.
You have a map of that street.
Yeah, and that's the problem. The map.
We don't have it now.
Mary and Josh, I know there was some discussion of the configuration of the 3.5 acres that the Salamanos are getting to build on. Because of where it is in the totality of those 13 acres, did that drive the bus on why the 25-foot easement with 10 acres?
Well, yes, because they're proposing that they take the entire 60-foot strip that's on, that runs the length of Chigwell, and they want that transferred to them as part of this 3.5 acre set. Which, if I do that without retaining an easement, makes the balance of the land worthless to me. And to the town, well, not to the town, because theoretically you wouldn't really care. But because I'm donating it, the only benefit to me donating it is that I get a write-off. That's based on valuation. If you cut off my ingress and egress, and I don't have that, then that land, my appraiser can't value the land at anything, because I don't have any access. And that's the whole reason for the easement.
Is the easement, John, is the easement to the Salamanos or is it to the town?
No, it would be I would retain it, it would be to the town. So I would transfer 3.5 acres out.
With an easement, retaining an easement?
Retaining an ingress and egress easement. The utility easements don't matter, they're there, they run with the land. But the ingress and egress, if they're taking the entire length of the road, the land that abuts the road, I have no way of getting into those 10 acres. Effectively, by selling those 3.5 acres the way they want, I might as well give them 13.5 acres because it's worthless. The only way it makes sense.
We're getting a piece of property with an ingress egress easement.
Right. And then, so I'm trying to make this a win-win for everybody. So that if I do that, and I retain the easement, and then I donate it to the town doesn't need it. But as long as I transfer it with the easement, the valuation is there. What you do with it afterwards doesn't affect it.
Is the easement drawn on the proposed map?
The easement.
Or will it be drawn, I assume?
The easement that's drawn is like 10 feet, right?
It's 10 feet, but practically speaking, it's the same effect.
Right. I need 25, so to make it work for me. And to make it work for the Salamanos, it needs to be withdrawn by the town once I transfer it to the town. I mean, that's the sticking point here, is this easement. So in my mind, because I've never done this before, it would seem that it's just an administrative thing. I would transfer 3.5 acres to the Salamanos. I would transfer the deed to the entire parcel, accepting the parcel that I'm transferring to the Salamanos to the town with the easement. And the town would say, okay, thank you very much for this 10.5 acres or 10 acres, however much it is, it's approximately 10 acres. But we don't need this easement, so we're gonna withdraw it. I don't know if I'm using the proper term, but it's no longer an easement that's gonna be used by the town.
Well, but if we're giving it to you, you're the one that can abandon the easement, we can't.
He's got a large parcel of land.
Right.
He wants to sell off a portion
Correct.
to some residents.
Right.
They wanted the full 60 feet. If he does that, he landlocks himself and he can't subdivide it. All right, the county.
It loses its value.
Well, he can't subdivide it either.
Yeah, that's correct, you can't subdivide it.
Can't subdivide it. So you give him the access easement, included in the subdivision. Now he's got a 2-lot subdivision of which the town has a 20-foot access. At which point.
The town will have these.
Right, at which point he closes, they close, they've got their property, they come to the town and request us to abandon that easement, of which the town can do. We just abandon the easement that we get. He's given us.
Okay, no, I wasn't here when this application came in,
So theoretically, we abandon the easement that he gives to us, we have no ingress and egress.
We do from the back parcels, we get in from the other property.
Right.
well, here's, all right, so it's not your easement, you're giving it to the town.
I'm giving it to the town when I transfer, when I do the dedication.
You're giving us an easement additional to the 10 acres.
Correct.
Okay.
I didn't understand.
Correct.
Okay,
Kind of wish we had that drawing up because
yeah.
why,
The way it would work then is if the board approves, somebody's got to come in later and say, would you abandon the easement and show why it should be
if
abandoned.
we have an easement on our own property.
Yeah.
I'd like to see
It's an access easement. It's something that we don't, it's not something we often talk about, having an access easement.
I was just trying to figure the easiest way out to get everybody what they want, and that's the easiest way to do it.
I'd like to hear from town engineer if that's okay. Do you have anything, Josh, Mary, you have anything to put in this?
It does give access from this Chigwell subdivision to the north and from the, what's the road, is it? Brooksboro, to the east. I guess I wonder what the intent of the use the town would have for the 10 acres if we took it. If it was for some sort of trail system or something, why wouldn't we want to have some sort of access at that area? Or if it's just going to be a wooded lot that the town would have. It's always, I think it's always nice to have an easy way to get in and out of a property that the town has ownership of, but there is access abutting it. It would just be, a further distance to get to it.
That's always something we could address at a later date. Abandoning the easement. Deeding the easement to the Salamanos.
Well, again, I don't want to speak for the Salamanos, but I'm not sure they're going to want to pay me for a parcel of land if the town decides they don't want to abandon the easement. You see what I'm saying? They want exclusive use of that 60 feet. Harvey, am I speaking out of turn?
That's correct, yes.
So, in my mind, this land that I'm proposing to dedicate is adjacent to land you already own. So when you say it's nice to have another access point, that's true, but you don't have one now to the land just north.
It's not our land right now.
No.
Your parcel isn't our land.
Right, but what you have doesn't have an access point to the south. You have to come in from the north, I believe, right? Is it the north? I don't have the map.
I've looked at it.
Yeah, so the town owns several properties to the north, existing off of Webster and Chigwell. And, the easement, the intent of the proposed easement is for the tax write-off.
There would be no further service. There is an existing easement in the same area.
Well, I guess my thought is you're saying you want everyone to win out. You know, you're saying you win, you're saying the resident wins, but the town doesn't have access. So how are we coming out with a better situation for this land?
You get another 10 acres of land that you have access to that 10 acres I'm giving you to the north. It's not like you're gonna put a road in there, it's not like you're gonna develop that. I mean, it's basically, my understanding is the town wants to keep that as green space. So, it's green space, right? I mean, I don't know what you're doing with that land now, and I'm just looking at it and saying, gee, it's not like I'm giving you 10 acres of land that's in the middle of somewhere else that doesn't adjoin land you already own. You're just acquiring more green space.
So what are we looking at right now? What we're talking about is completing this proposal with a promise that we will abandon the easement that you dedicate to us.
Right, for their benefit.
For their benefit.
For the Salamanos benefit.
And if we don't do that, they're not going to want to buy the property.
Correct. Nor will I want to sell it, because I'm basically giving, if I do that, I might as well give the Salamanos 13 acres of land for the purchase price, because it's worthless. What's remaining.
Show me. Can you just show me the picture? I don't want to drag this out. I just want to make sure. And I just want to see where is this easement we're talking about. All right.
So is this on the north side?
And
That would be their drive, like.
So this is, there's no drive access. We have to cut trees down to make access.
this is the 10.
Right, I think there's like.
This whole thing.
It just wasn't presented to us this way.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny for anybody watching at home. This is deja vu to 2 weeks ago. You're like, well, are you looking gift horse in the mouth? You're getting 10 acres of land. Remember the last resolution? $82,000 the town had paid to cut trees down on our land. So land can become a liability for the town. So I won't, council, you can appreciate that. I just want to make sure we're measuring twice, cutting once. So this is the 60 feet you're talking about, or 25 feet.
Yes, the actual property was
Yeah. Yeah, which gives us access into here. And then you're saying that then we abandon this?
benefit the Salamanos and have access to this property. Several other parcels.
That abut this, abut it.
So here it actually goes all the way up.
Did you, just so, because, you know, I get it, you know.
I think I explained it fairly well.
Was it explained to this, Bill? Is that the way you envisioned it, that that's coming onto the land, that's the easement that would be abandoned?
This is the easement that goes
To our land,
all right?
yeah,
It's a two-lot subdivision. That's
Yeah.
the only way it makes it legal for the
right,
county.
okay,
Okay?
Yeah.
Once they get a legal two-lot subdivision, he can sell one lot to those individuals.
got it,
Donate that rest of it to the town. They can come back to the town and request us to eliminate the easement. We don't need it. We say, fine, do away with the easement, it's yours.
I understand that, Bill, but I just want to make sure everybody understands, there's three parties here. The Salamanos want something that's a win for them. John wants something that's a win for him. Yeah, so I want something that's a win for the town. I don't want to apologize about that.
No, it's
So we get the 10 acres, all right? So what, where you say we're gonna do this later, I think what John is saying is we gotta build this into this right now.
If the Salamanos are happy with doing it later, that's fine. They're the ones who have to decide that. Because once I deed it to the town, when I deed it with the easement, I'm out of the picture.
Okay.
Right, so the Salamanos, so we envision all this happening at once. They purchase the 3.5 acres, I transfer the 10 acres to the town with the easement. Solomonos are gonna want, I'm assuming, some type of assurance that that easement is not going to be there because they're going to spend a lot of money to put their dream home on, right? So I don't think they want the uncertainty of coming back later after they paid me for the 3.5 acres, paid their bank attorneys and everything else, coming back before this body and saying, hey, can you please release the easement? I think that's because now they're invested, and I'm not sure they're gonna want this land with a 25-foot easement.
So, Charlie, how do we even, what motion are we making to send this back?
I don't feel comfortable saying we're getting something to give it away. I would say that the application can be made, we understand that an application will be made sometime in the near future to abandon the easement. And, that would be it. I don't know, you're not gonna guarantee that it's town property.
So the administrative action.
I would say there's gotta be a cause for it, why we're doing it.
There's no doubt that the administrative action to subdivide this into 2 lots is gonna have to have that easement for access. No doubt about that. So we're sending this back to the planning board for the 19th to do what at the planning board? It's an administrative action, right?
Well, it technically could be, but we decided that the planning board would be the entity. So they're going back for preliminary and final subdivision approval.
Okay, and within that, there's no way that board is gonna approve the subdivision unless there's that easement on the 10 acres that gets access on the 10 acres. Because that's a lot.
Otherwise, yes.
Okay. Okay, so what are we saying here tonight? What is, it said we're issued a determination on their interest. Town board to issue determination on their interest in accepting the proposed donation of 10 acres of land. Want to make this simple? Yeah, we want the 10 acres, right?
Yeah.
But what John just said, what does that change about our resolution tonight? Does it change anything?
All different.
And how different? How do we word this?
I don't know how you work, because you're trying to do 3 things at the same time.
Well, I think you're
But I think
saying.
you're trying to do 2, you're trying to do one
No,
thing.
because if we receive an easement, we're receiving an interest in land, as a government, we can't just say, yeah, we're gonna receive it and give it back. There would have to be a basis, or a reason for us to do that. So there have to be, I'll say, good cause shown, all right? We would have to say we don't have a need for it anymore, or whatever. But somebody would have to come to us and say that. We can't guarantee it ahead of time.
We can't do a motion here that kills 3 birds, 4 birds in sequence. All we can do, if I understand you correctly, is, yeah, the town board is saying, yes, thank you, Mr. Naka. We certainly graciously accept your donation of 10 acres. And blah, 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 move it toward the planning board for subdivision. We don't have to say anything else because by definition, the only way the planning board would approve the subdivision is with the easement. And we're not gonna say anything about, oh, but we're gonna take the easement, but later we're gonna get rid of the easement. I don't think we can do a motion like that.
I don't think you should do it.
I agree with that too. Quite a meeting tonight, huh?
Marvin Dumas, representing Solomonos. My good friend Mr. Knock and I have been for years practicing law. And unfortunately, we may be at a stalemate here because the Solomonos are not going to invest $300,000-400,000 in their dream home and then be subject to a 25-foot wide easement along the entranceway to their property. So we're hoping that we could have gotten the board to commit to give up that easement. I understand your concerns about that, So without that promise on your part to do so, I'm not sure they're willing to go forward and build this house. What we're looking at right now is a piece of vacant land that maybe the town is getting a couple $1,000s a year in property taxes.
I'd call it more than that.
Yeah,
But in any event,
I know you, your name was again?
Harvey Buick.
That's right, Harvey Buick,
I
yeah.
remember
Orange
that
County,
in
right.
Ford Motor.
Right, all right, let me ask you this,
Yes.
all right? The stool with 3 prongs, one of them comes out and falls down, right? I think I understand. He needs that easement for value on the appraisal, so he gets his tax write-off.
Right.
Great for Mr. Naka.
Yes.
Love it. They need that easement gone so they can build their dream home.
Correct.
And the town, to subdivide it easy, I'm having a hard time figuring out how we as a board can approve all that when they seem to be sequentially have to happen in order. And I don't know that we can do all that so everybody wins at the same time.
I don't see that we can.
As we can say, we can take the 10 acres and we can complete that, and they're gonna have to trust the fact that we're going to work on abandoning the easement, giving them the easement. And I don't know that if they would wanna do that.
I'll tell you what, and it's getting late, is this the answer to this? Move it on to the subdivision, okay? Which by definition needs the easement on our 10 acres. Donate the land to the town before you close on the 3 acres. And then if the town then goes and abandons that easement, couldn't you then sell them that? And after that?
I can sell the 3 acres, but what happens to me if the town says no? Now I've got 3 acres of land that not very many buyers will want to buy because there's a 25-foot easement running right down the property.
John, I understand. What I'm trying to do is figure out how all 3 parties win. I understand how all 3 parties win, I just don't know sequentially. We've said, and you guys are 2 attorneys, you could go out for coffee with Charlie. How do we do that legally? I think the sequence I just described, in good faith, okay? Like you said, why would we not abandon it? Okay? You sequentially, if I understand correctly, you donate us the land that has the easement on it.
Right.
At the time of that donation, right, it had an easement.
Yep.
You go to the IRS, you say, hey, look, it had an easement, it's got a value, appraiser says it's got value, you get your write-off, God bless you.
Right.
A day, 2 days later, I think, going back to our real title days, right, Harry?
Right.
If the town comes back, and I don't see any reason why we wouldn't abandon that easement,
No, that's the whole purpose of getting this thing forward for those people that have that lot.
we abandon the easement, and now they're like, hey,
That's
we
fine.
can buy the 3 acres off of you.
That's
They
fine.
get their dream property, you get the sale, and we got our land. Does that do it?
Well, and the planning board's requiring this as well.
Well, the planning board, if I understand, administratively or planning board wise, you can't subdivide into 2 lots and have 1 lot that doesn't have access.
Right. That's what I'm saying, they're gonna require it.
Josh?
Yeah, I think that when it was originally explained to the planning board, they were a bit confused, as we all were initially, about the order of things and the legality of abandoning easement, which is why it was tabled to see if the town board was even interested in entertaining the idea.
Here's what I would.
Describe the sequence?
I mean, in my mind, and just because I don't do this kind of work, so I don't know how these boards work, it would seem to me that you could. You folks know better than me. You're telling me you can't do all 3 together, so that's fine. I don't have a problem with doing it in reverse and donating the land with an easement to the town. And then selling the lot to the Salamanos and having the town get rid of the easement. You're giving me certain assurances, not assurances, but you're kind of amenable to getting rid of that easement.
I think we are.
So, I mean,
Go ahead.
so I'm willing to take that gamble.
Well, and I think that's the gamble that we're all going to have to take, because what's on our agenda tonight is for us to issue a determination on our interest in accepting the proposed donation of 10.1 acres. I think you've heard what our interest is. Yes, we would like to. At this point, this board, yes, we are amenable to abandoning that easement. But we can't, legally, we can't do that at this meeting. And I think we've all determined what our interest is.
I like Supervisor Fleury's proposal, and I think John and I will discuss it afterwards, but I think if the board passes a resolution to accept the donation,
That will go a long way to maybe calming Mr. and Mrs. Salamano in terms of, you know, moving forward from their end, and we'll talk about how we do this. Because it really doesn't matter whether the Salamanos buy it and they make the application, or I donate it, then they buy it and make the application, right? For the removal of the easement.
Josh, is the conservation board the block trust property?
They have,
Do they have anything to say about it on the conservation side?
you know, they had a little concern in regards to the topography and the angle at which the bridge to cross over the creek would be, but they didn't seem to indicate any other major concerns. They said it was heavily wooded and a lot of brush. Obviously, there's a stream that runs through there, and DEC would be heavily involved working as well.
Yeah, I know that, because I was in that neighborhood a few weeks ago, and the neighbors are very concerned with the integrity of that stream. Do we know that this isn't 10 acres of ash trees?
Well, I think it's old growth is really what it is. I don't think there are issues.
I did visit the site a week or two ago. I didn't get deep into it, but just from a quick visual inspection, there didn't appear to be dead or dying ash trees. I may have spotted a few that had leaves on them still, but it's not like it's all ash trees.
I like to add that too regarding the stream. We are working with our Corps of Engineers currently with that, and we even have a joint permit pending with them. So that's a separate item that we're working with currently.
Okay. Tell me how this sounds. This sounds simplified I'm gonna get, and it sounds good to you, Charlie. Then maybe we get a second and we're done. Because I was gonna make a motion to accept the donation of 10 plus or minus acres of land to the town of Webster by John Naka upon proper subdivision.
Second.
Oh, the attorney had it just in.
Okay. Supervisor Flaherty? Oh, you want to-
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Go ahead.
Councilman Cahill? Councilwoman Catali?
Aye.
Did you follow that?
thank you.
Step one, planning board goes and does that. Obviously, you can't subdivide without the easement. As soon as that gets done, you know, there is an election November 4th, so you might want to get back here, because, no, anyway.
Very well.
Thank you
Sorry.
very much.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Hey, Art?
Yes.
You gotta get up in 5 hours?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Interesting argument here.
So do you,
Is that an option? Can you
You want to tell us a little bit about this before we?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure it's even a resolution at this point. We would be putting on an RFQ tomorrow, request for qualifications of potential energy performance contracting firms related to the wastewater treatment plant project. This will give the town the opportunity to interview these firms and learn more about what they offer and answer some of our questions that we've all had over the past few weeks. There's no commitment to these firms at all at that point.
Yeah.
Again, it's just it's an information gathering.
Can I tell you why I would like to put in the record as a resolution?
Absolutely.
Because it's so different from the way things have been done, the linear, whatever, that as we get educated on this, if it ever comes to a board decision that we go with performance contracting, I'd like to tick and tie back to this.
Yeah, I think that makes great sense.
So I'm going to make a motion to execute an RFQ, request for qualifications, for potential energy performance contracting firms related to upgrading the town's wastewater treatment facility.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilwoman Cataldi?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill? Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Allen?
Unfortunately, I'm going to say nay, and I'll explain why. I don't think we need a resolution to request for proposal.
Okay. Request for RFQ.
An RFQ, we don't need a resolution to do an RFQ.
What does it hurt to have them?
That's why I'm saying nay.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine. And I mean, actually, Charlie, from our talk yesterday, we didn't need a resolution legally to set a public meeting. So you are absolutely correct. Was that why you said nay, John?
No, I'm not a proponent of
Councilman Cahill, let me answer that if I could. We've all sat here, we've all had questions, I have questions myself. This affords the town the opportunity to pull in different firms and get those questions answered. And that's all it is doing.
Process. I understand.
Yeah, okay.
I understand the process. I disagree with it. I just feel that we have qualified guys here, and your stewardship of phase one is, I am very comfortable with that.
And I can appreciate that, and I very much, love your, your comments to me. But I, for one, this is a $31 million project. It's the largest project the town's ever taken on. I would like to know more about these firms and the services they offer, because I want to check all the boxes personally to see if it's a good fit or not. And it may not be, but it may be. But we can, in my mind, we can check those boxes.
Yeah, and I think it's important to state again, we are in no way committing to going through this process and doing it this way, but we're getting our questions answered.
Correct.
So that we can make an educated decision on whether we should or not.
Good. Yep.
So the next item is a resolution to declare the following item for auction from the sewer department. Coleman Englow air compressor model, asset number 2434B-50, serial number 11025204.
Second.
Councilwoman Cataldi?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Allen?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
I should add that it's going to auction.
Real quick, because it's 10 o'clock, we are, well, if somebody calls in the next 2 minutes, God bless them, they've hung on for 2.5 hours. I'm not going to go around and do the round robin, but I will say, Charlie, I do want to make a motion for us to enter into executive session.
I think the subject matter is potential litigation, so I think that would be under 105 subdivision 1, subdivision D of public officers.
That's my motion.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty.
Aye.
Councilman Dean.
Aye.
Councilman Abbott.
Aye.
Councilman Cahill.
Aye.
Councilwoman Cattola.
Aye.
Okay, so this will conclude, and we'll be emptying the room of any of the people attending and in person, and also we will be closing out the TV live stream on channel 1303. Initially, I would like the town board and Attorney Genesi in this session, and I reserve the right, if you could comment, be outside so we can call you in if there's need be on this. You've been invited, Charlie.
Yes.